The Why Me Project, an exclusive presentation of Faith Strong Today.
It's integrity time. I wish we had some sort of like singing drop, like we were Throwback Thursdays, or
it could be like integrity
time. Obviously, one of the three of us can sing by the sounds of that.
It's not me or Johnny.
Oh, that was pretty great.
Not us. Leslie Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Just
Amazing.
Trying to keep my head above water after my son started kindergarten this week. So this is the first full week of kindergarten, and we're just, last night he didn't go to sleep super great and he woke up super early this morning. So this afternoon might be a total disaster, but
yes,
he's loving it, which feels like a win,
So day one, were you a ball of tears?
Yeah,
was your
what kind of
husband a
mom are
ball
you?
of tears? Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was for sure. My husband wasn't. So my husband actually has been home with Judah, our son, since he was 19 months old, and he handled a lot of the preschool drop-offs, which were super emotional. But
Yeah.
I think he was more prepared for the growing up of our son, and I was more like, but I still want him to be this little baby that needs us. And he hops out of the car and walks himself into school every day, and it's not a small school. I'm just like, bye.
Watch out for the bigger kids. Don't give them your lunch money.
Oh yeah, that's the terrifying thing. It's like, how do I know he got to class?
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, I think I'd probably get a phone call if he doesn't show up to his classroom, but it's still, I'm first time kindergarten mom, all the feelings. And we were walking in and I was just like, why am I crying right now? What's wrong with me?
Where's this water coming from?
I know. I was definitely the mom that was like, well, see ya.
Yeah, nice.
I got stuff to do.
Yeah, all right. I hope you have a good day. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm getting there. But I think it was just felt abrupt.
Or Johnny was the crier.
No. Okay, I cried, and then I'm like, okay, goodbye, and then I left, and then they had a little peek in the window, so I was like. I was kind of, and I might have been there for 5 hours. But it doesn't matter. Anyways, let's move on, shall we? Leslie, we'd like to ask a skill testing question because we never know where it's going to go. And that is, who are you and where did you come from?
I'm a Capricorn. No, I am Leslie Jordan. I am not the one who died tragically last year. I am from Tennessee. I was born in North Carolina, but raised in Tennessee and still live here. I've lived a few other places kind of throughout my life, but call Tennessee home. And I mean, who I am is just, it's like a spinning diamond, my friend. You can ask more specific questions. I can give you more specific answers, but it's hard to say who I am. So that's what you get, I guess.
I love that. That's like so honest because that's what we ask the question. We never know where someone's going to take it. Yeah. So sometimes people say, well, I am, and they'll define themselves by what they do. Other people about how other people would describe them. So it's exciting to see what people say.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I just said my name. I basically ruined the game.
Fine. Completely fine. It's all good.
I am Leslie Jordan. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
Did you grow up with a love of music? When did you realize that you had a musical talent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my parents they both loved music. They have been divorced for 27 years, but they still talk about when they were first dating. Most of their first dates were like to concerts. And so music was just huge in my house, and like singer-songwriter, the Eagles, Bob Dylan, we listened to everything. And so, we always had music going on, or my dad was always singing something. He sang in the choir. My mom can sing. But music wasn't something my immediate family or anyone in my extended family did for a living. So I didn't know that was like a job I could have. I didn't know I could do music, but I got a violin for Christmas in second grade.
Wow.
And that was my first instrument. I can still eke out Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on my tiny elementary school violin. I think I played it for like 6 months and then got bored. And then got a guitar in fourth grade. And I think because I had seen so many musicians heard so many musicians. I did love the idea of playing something. My aunt also did play the guitar, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And so really didn't turn back after fourth grade. Got the guitar, started taking lessons, and yeah, no looking back after that.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that your parents got divorced when you were
Yeah.
younger, and so that always seems to shape the youth in such a it's like a big flag in the sand, like
Yeah,
this
for sure.
happened and it changed me forever. How did that impact you while you were going through that and even now reflecting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like the tectonic plates shifting in my world. And
Yeah.
it caused even like, I moved to Indiana with my mom, my sister stayed with my dad. So there was even this like separation of kind of
Oh,
my safe place as a kid.
yeah.
So I think really from then on, I've just been I've been looking for safe places since then. And I think because of that, there's a both and in that, where there's like kind of this really sad reality of that and what that was. But then there's also this really beautiful thing that came out of that for me, that was I also love to create safe spaces for people. So it's not just like I'm constantly looking for them. I'm now at a point in my life and career and spiritual journey where I feel like I have a responsibility to return the favor to others. And it feels like a privilege to be that for other people. And we were kind of joking around about best friends earlier, but I do think for me, the friendships that I have formed in the last 5 to 10 years have really shown me what it means to show up for people when that shift happens in life, because it just does, And so I'm constantly looking for ways to continue being a safe person and surrounding myself with safe people. And what I mean by safe, is can I be myself with those people? Do people feel like they can be themselves with me? Is it a disarming enough space that we can show up with our full selves and leave with our full selves? I think that's something I kind of recognized. It was probably 2016, where I was having some like pretty significant anxiety and panic attacks around sort of family of origin stuff, and ended up back in therapy. And I kind of had this realization, like what I do is I take all of myself into something and then I leave a good bit of it behind. And so I walk out of whatever circumstance I'm in and I feel like I'm a fraction of myself on the whatever journey is ahead. And so what I had to realize was, okay, I got to go in with 100%. And I have to also leave with 100%. So I love that being that person where I don't require anything. I don't want to require anything from people, where it's like, it feels like a mutual space where relationally we can show up together and we can leave fully intact, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So
perfectly.
that's kind of a hope. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, something lacking overall in society. There's not a lot of safe places.
Yeah.
Everyone's worried about being canceled or saying the wrong thing or offending somebody. And I know that's a little bit more broad when we think of culture, but I love the idea of, intentionally going out there and creating safe places for people.
Thanks. Yeah. It feels like I know the word calling gets thrown around a lot, but maybe more like a life mission for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did want to wait and talk about the fold, but I mean, we could definitely dive into that, because I didn't realize that you would need, as an artist or a songwriter, and that a place to have that safe place. So how important was it then for you to kind of create this not-for-profit and to be able to have not only just for yourself, but other artists and people go and be a part of the fold?
I don't think at the time I was thinking, hindsight's 2020. So I'm looking back on the origin of the fold and going, I was creating something I didn't even know I needed,
Right.
So it was really out of a desire for myself, because I think, especially in the music industry right now, and that's my lens. That's the world I know. I was in church for 10 years on staff and consulting and leading worship. And then I've been a part of a record label for 13 years. And so these are ministry spaces and businesses and churches, and there is always something being like that transaction. There's always something being like traded, right? Which is like, you do this, I give you this. Or there's ownership, right? Where an artist will produce something and then they only get to retain a percentage of what they create because the label, retains the other percent. And so I'm walking in more of an understanding of what that looks like. And so back then I think I just needed a place where nothing was expected of me and my art, where I could just show up and create. Nobody was going to take anything from it. I didn't need to write a song that was going to go on a project. And so, yeah, I look back and I go, wow, that's what I didn't know I needed. And so in the process of that, I think creating that space, hearing from so many other artists, wow, I didn't know I needed this space either. And it's been really beautiful. We continue to have, gatherings, whether it's day retreats. Our organization has shifted so much over the years because of COVID and whatnot. But anytime we have a gathering, anytime we're together and we get to create the environment where people sit and eat together and have a conversation, and it's a gathering of artists where there's no other purpose but to just be like cared for. Artist care is basically the mission, right? I hear on the backside of that, we need this. We need this. We need this in Nashville. We need this. And so it's always encouraged. Like I was at a birthday party last weekend, and Ellie Holcomb was there, and Ellie was a part of the Faithful Project thing that Integrity did a few years back. And so the Fold kind of partnered with Faithful Project, and we did some of our creative writing exercises. And Ellie is just always so generous and basically said to me what she said to me so many times, like, that creative writing practice changed something in me. The space changed something in me. Like, I was able to make a record that was more vulnerable than I, have done in the past. And so I hear that, like, I don't mean to like seem like I'm name dropping, but that is somebody that you would know, like, okay, it's a really impactful space to be in a room with people who need nothing from you, want nothing from you, want to encourage you, celebrate your original voice, the thing that you have that's been like woven into your being, that's unique to you. It's a pretty special space for sure.
I think there's Ellie Holcomb, and I think she's going to break out at some point.
Yeah. Maybe one day you guys will hear her music. I don't know.
Oh,
she's ridiculous.
amazing.
She's so incredible.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the Fold and what it is offering to artists in Nashville, it's again, you're creating those safe spaces. What do you hope it grows into, or are you just leaving it to the twists and turns of where God takes it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think leading anything feels double-sided, where there is like this eager anticipation of what it could become, and also this like crippling fear that it might not become anything. And so I struggle sometimes with the two sides of that. And I would love for it to be accessible to as many songwriters as possible. I think one thing I've learned when it comes to growing organizations is, to have a very particular audience in mind. We kind of went like any creative person, writers and songwriters, authors, and if you're a lawyer and you want to do some creative writing, like because this writing practice is it's such a gift to anyone. We kind of had a wide scope initially, but now we've kind of narrowed it down to we have created this space for songwriters, and that's our hope. And they can be a songwriter and an artist, but ultimately at the heart of it, it's these folks who use music as a tool for communicating. And so I hope more than anything, we can continue to be a safe space for the people who have come into the Fold. And at some level we can create, maybe we're not really a mass audience sort of organization. So there is no like, our retreats are free and they're invitation only. And I think that's what helps keep it safe, is that you get invited because we know who you are, and we know that it's going to be, there's a lot of artists in this town that don't have places where they can show up and be themselves. And so, but then, it's just some entry level space for artists to come, like, get to know each other. Like, there's not a lot of places like that around here either, that aren't looking for, you to sign a pub deal or a, development deal or something, or a church that needs somebody to run the cameras on Sunday. Like, there's always somebody that wants something from you. And I would love to be that space for artists that are just moving here to find community without an obligation.
Hmm.
I mean, when you started to where you are now, it's worlds, a big, massive difference. Now, when you started doing music and that, was the goal solo career? Was the goal, okay, let's do like an All Sons and Daughters? Was the goal, let's be in a group? Like, where was your mindset? Or did you not even care? You just wanted to do music?
Yeah.
I had a glimpse into the music industry at 18, was offered a development deal with a label that doesn't exist anymore, and drove down here in high school and sat with all the label executives. And I feel like I saw the kind of like gross underbelly of the music industry. And then it was like
Mm,
connected that with Christianity, something felt incongruent to me.
Yeah.
And I was struggling to see how I fit. And so I was offered this record deal, and at the same time, I was offered a chance to go lead worship for a short-term missions organization that summer and go to college in the fall. And I was like, I'm gonna go lead worship for like I turned down the record deal because I was like, that
yeah.
just it didn't feel like me. Um and so I think I maybe, if I had any sort of ambition for the music industry at that point, it went away because of what
Mm,
I saw in that. And like I said, that label doesn't exist anymore, I think probably for a good reason. Um, but it was never a goal necessarily. So once I started leading worship in the church, there was this shift in my heart that was like, oh, I just want to do this. This is all I really care about.
yeah.
And so just saw myself working for churches and leading worship, and that was it. And so the All Sons and Daughters thing really kind of snuck up on me. I think I look back now and I go, there was obviously, like, David had been in the industry for a season before with Jackson Waters and Toward Need to Breathe and all those things. Like, it wasn't like it just happened out of nowhere, right? Like, he
Right.
had been really involved in the music industry before that. New people who, came to, like, our friend Teresa was the first one to approach us. She went to our church. We had started writing songs together for that church body and just sharing them. And she's like, "Are you guys in a band?" And we were like, "No." So I don't know if maybe David had a different agenda.
Yeah.
He says that he didn't, but for us, my intention, my goal was really to just give songs to our church to sing.
Mm,
And before I knew it, was kind of making decisions about, okay, like, are we going to go on this tour with Chris Tomlin? And are we going to, like it just felt like it did for me. It felt like it happened overnight when I was sort of anti
yeah.
establishment, if you will, for so long. I was like, wait a minute. It was a bit of a head spin. But I'm so thankful for how it happened. I don't know that it could have happened any other way. I think Integrity was such a perfect fit for us because they were a church music organization. Like, they just, like, they basically said, stay at home, write songs. We'll just help put your records out and let people
Mm,
sing them, and that felt right to me. And it was. And we had to learn how to keep the boundaries in terms of how long, how often we were going to be at home versus how often we were going to be on the road. And all that stuff felt really sweet to me. I never felt like I was like, oh no, like I was tricked. I think music's always been such a big part of my life, but I don't think I saw it working out this way necessarily,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have two thoughts. One, I'm so glad that you brought up the first opportunity because I'm starting to hear more and more from artists, for Christian artists, saying it's an interesting world when you see the underbelly of the music industry.
Mm,
It's
Yeah.
painted with but we're Christian.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard for them to process
Yeah,
that it's still an industry, it's still a business.
that's
Um,
right.
you
That's
know,
right.
looking back on the you then and the you now, what is something that you would say to artists who are looking for a deal and maybe are feeling a little bit disheartened by what they're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think artists who come into the Christian music industry specifically with somewhat of an attachment to church or ministry, we do, it's like we have to take that lens off and we have to see it as business. So what I tell younger artists now is, like, you are the CEO of your business. You
mm,
are the one in charge. Like, if music is your business, I know it sucks to talk about, but, like, if you're making art and you want your art to make a living, you have to be the owner and the person who runs your company. Otherwise, there's a million people in this town who want to run your company for you and will tell you how to run it. And so, to me, education is huge. I think I sit with other artists and help them look through their royalty statements. Like, are we sure, like, as a business owner, are you sure you're getting paid what you're supposed to be getting paid? Are you sure you're recouping what you're supposed to be recouping? Are you sure you haven't already recouped? There's all these questions we don't know to ask because we're just so eager to put the music out, which is so important, right? That part is so important. But the business side of it is equally important. And I think there are a lot of people, specifically, I don't know that it's intentional necessarily, but folks who do run the businesses around here, it's a little bit easier if the artists aren't running their own. Like, I'm probably not a favorite from some of the people I've worked with because I ask a lot of questions and I'm an investigator. I want to know how things work, and I've always been that way. So sometimes it's a lot easier if the artists just don't care how things function because everyone else can run it for them. But I'm such an advocate for, artists understanding how their business is run and what percentage they're giving up in order to have a record deal and what it looks like to borrow money and how long that money is going to be. It's crazy. So those are all things I didn't know to ask or think about, when someone's like, here, I'll pay for a record for you.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And
what does it mean? What does it mean? And what's the obligation? We're just like, sure, I'll sign that. And I think, nowadays deals look a lot different from the deal we signed 13 years ago because streaming wasn't even a thing back then.
Yeah.
So, from what I've heard, it's a lot more equitable, but I still like to have conversations with as many artists who ask.
I'd like to invest in the Taylor Swift business if that's possible.
Yes,
I think
please.
you probably can. There probably is some sort of open public.
Probably some sort of cryptocurrency called Taylor Swift. You have a new EP which was released last month. You Are With Me. This might be a little more still behind the curtain kind of thing, but why do an EP and not a full length? Because I mean, you've kind of done 2 EPs. Like, why not just mash one together? Or does it make sense as an artist to kind of, hey, here's a couple, hey, here's a couple, hey, here's a couple, because then you can kind of get a different feel.
Yeah,
that's a great question. I actually have been listening to this. I'm going to look it up so I don't get it wrong. But this podcast, Ari Herstand, is that how you say his name? Do you know who I'm talking about?
No. But that's fine.
Yeah, Ari Herstand, new music business with Ari Herstand, and it's something I would recommend to any artist, independent or signed. But he was doing a Q&A and somebody asked that same question. And I didn't necessarily, this is not what I was thinking. So I'm going to answer your questions in 2 parts. My project was designed solely as a means for me to help. So these are all songs that were written for other people for their projects. So I have songs that were cut on Mission House Records, Sandra McCracken Records, Citizens Records, Porter's Gate Records. Wilder was a Maverick City band for a while. So these are all songs I helped write that went on other people's records that somewhere along the way I felt connected to. And whether it was because of the relationships with the people who I wrote them with, or I just really liked the song. So my goal wasn't to relaunch an artist career. I don't have an ambition for that in Christian music. But my goal was to illuminate some of these songs and kind of, I've said, like, dress them up in new clothes, essentially, to represent them, to say, here's songs that, if they didn't slip through the cracks, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but here's a new version of an old song you may be familiar with, or maybe not. And there was really no agenda for me. I partnered with Integrity because they're my publisher, and they've been super, accommodating in terms of, me wanting to make these projects and put them out and elevate these songs and celebrate the co-writers and their projects. And so I went in with my friend Jess Ray, who co-produced it with me. And I just said, I want to make a worship project that sounds like Sufjan Stevens and the Weepies had a baby. Like, if we can, if it would be something that I would genuinely want to put on in the car, like, I think there's nowadays there's just a sound that that's happening kind of generically across worship music, which 10 years ago we were talking about that with CCM, right? There's just a sound. Yeah. It's happening now in worship music. And so I'm like, let's just mix it up a little bit. It's not like I need this to be anything. I just want it to be a celebration of the songs. And so that's why I did it in 2 projects, is more kind of just to have some stuff to put out. But I will also answer this question if people are listening and wondering why people put out EPs versus records. This is something that Ari said in his podcast, which I loved. He said, wait for the record until you have something you want to say. So the way the music industry works now, the way streaming platforms work now, the way the algorithm, I hate that word. The way the algorithm works now is it wants as much content as often as possible, right? And we consume content as much as we can as often as possible. We're on our phones constantly. We're listening to podcasts constantly. That's just the way we have now been trained to consume. So if you have 12 songs that don't necessarily feel like a cohesive album, record them all and then release them once a month. Some of my favorite artists are just putting a song out a month. You don't have to necessarily put all this pressure into creating this like package content that like, I love records. Don't get me wrong. I'm like a big fan of a project, A to Z. But if we're talking today's music industry, it's smaller bites are always better.
Yeah. So what's ironic and funny, and Holly will ask her questions. I'm sorry, I'm all of a sudden hogging. When I was listening to some of your stuff, it was literally like, oh, she's like the female Sufjan. So then it's funny that you mentioned that, and then you say bits and pieces because his albums have like 380 songs on them. So it's the complete opposite of doing an EP.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah, totally. Well, I just wanted it to sonically sound like Sufjan. I didn't want to make a 20-track record.
Yeah. Remember the bonus tracks though? Like that was one of my favorite part of most albums.
Oh, same. I can still sing to you.
Hidden treasures.
I can still remember. I sing that hidden track on the Alanis Morissette Jagged Little Pills. That song still will pop in my head. I mean, like that was. I love those bonus hidden songs, man. They were great.
See, the new generation's just missing out.
They just don't know. They just don't know
the smell of a CD.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's my preferred way, right? Like like I said, I love albums. I love complete projects. I love concept stuff. I'm actually working on a concept record that's outside of the Christian music genre right now, and it will be a full project. It will probably have 12 plus songs on it. But when it comes to, for me, it's like when it comes to worship music, like most worship leaders are looking for something to lead on a Sunday. It's hard to find songs when you're having to wade through as much stuff as being put out. So I don't know. Part of me is like, just record a song, put it out, let the world hear it. If they love it, they're going to sing it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the Why Me project, and you already mentioned that you like to ask questions. And have you ever asked that question personally? Why me, whether in a valley or a mountaintop of life?
Oh gosh, is it fair to say like all of the valleys and all of the mountaintops are why me?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
So now it gets back to that. It depends on what you want me to talk about, because I feel like I'm constantly in a why me state of mind, from the opportunities to the grief and everything in between. I think life is so unpredictable that if we're failing to ask why me, we're probably not really living in the moment. And I mean, I don't know.
You're like, too many.
That's why we do it.
I know.
Or where'd you come from? You had nothing. Why me?
Yeah.
You're like, nope.
No. I mean, I think I've had a lot of really sweet opportunities in my life, and I come from a big family and we all get along, and I wonder, I have friends who don't talk to their parents, and so I even like down to the smallest details of my life, I think how fortunate I am, and gratitude just feels like something, we're trying to teach our 5.5-year-old. I'm always making up stupid statements, but it's like, if you have more gratitude, you'll have a better attitude. Like the idea, like that really, like, gratitude informs so much of what we do. And if we can see our lives from the perspective of gratefulness, that we have anything at all. And, why me? Why me? I think about the trajectory my life took when I was, even, that missions organization right out of high school. So many of those moments for me where I was kind of woven into this community of people that showed me a deeper understanding of who Jesus was, a broader perspective of what the church could be, and a more intimate view of myself. I think those are things that I just learned along the way, whether it was with that organization or in college. This is kind of really funny is like, we were visiting my old college pastor. It was me and a few friends. And he looked at the guys in our group, and this was a Baptist college ministry. So this will help clue you in a little bit on that. I was not a Baptist at the time. I was for 7 months when I worked for North American Mission Board, but at the moment didn't claim to be a Baptist. However, the invitation was extended to the men the guys in our group, would you want to move out to Hawaii to serve this college ministry? And I was, in the moment I was like, well, I would never move to Hawaii, and the next morning I woke up and I had this like lump in my throat and this feeling that like I was supposed to go, it was like such a God thing for me. And I remember sitting there going like, why God? Like, why do you want me to go? And he didn't ask me, he asked the guys, and so I see how that decision, I remember thinking, okay, if my parents are both cool with this, like I'm going to ask them first, what would you think if I said this? And I'm 20 in college, like my sophomore year of college. If they say like, go for it, then I know like God really did say this to me, because my parents were like, get an education, find a job. Like it was more that path for me. And I called both of them and their response was the same thing. Like, this seems like it could be a really cool opportunity. And you should, if you could, keep your classes and go out, like go for it. And so I was like, okay, well, so then I had to like call our old college pastor and be like, I know you're talking to the boys, but would you ever send a girl to be a missionary? Like, what are the odds? And so I ended up moving out there and I met my husband out there. And that was probably the biggest thing for me was my life shifted in that season where and not just him, but I feel like I actually really was introduced to Jesus maybe for the first time, right? Like I learned about Jesus my whole life. I understood the religion of Christianity, but like my experiences of Jesus were so rooted in the ground. And so I look back on that decision and that moment and that why God, why me? Why do you want me to go? And I see how everything changed for me in that moment. And those are little pivotal points for me in my life where I go, if that hadn't happened, like, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be married to Thomas and I wouldn't have this, life that I have. And so I can like kind of point all the way back in my life to these little things that have led to this season. And I feel like now in my life, I'm very fortunate and I'm doing all the things I think I ever dreamed I wanted to do.
One more for you before we wrap up. We've had a lot of conversations lately, Hollie and I, with our guests on adoption, people who are for adoption, people who have been adopted, and something that you and your husband have had an opportunity to go through. Why was adoption the answer for you guys?
Well, that's a very loaded question, but I will say adoption is such a gift, and it's also one of the most difficult things to walk through. So you have immense joy and immense suffering. We talk about this a lot with our in our marriage, and our son's 5.5. He knows his story, but I don't talk publicly as much about his story because it's his, and so I don't mind sharing that he's adopted, but a lot of how his story unfolded, I want that to be for him to tell publicly. Yeah. But I will say that any adoption story begins with a fracture, right? It begins with a separation. And so you're building from a place of brokenness from the downbeat. And so when it comes with this beautiful joy and this gift of our son and hands down one of the best why me moments in my life. Why do I get to be his mom? I ask that, and I ask him on a daily basis. I'm like, how did I get so lucky that I get to be your mom? Like, I feel so lucky and grateful and blessed. But I also know that with that joy comes this grief and sorrow and brokenness that is how it all began. And so I'm just super mindful of that. And I think I have friends who are adopted, and they've been super helpful in our story and helping illuminate, how to help guide him along his journey. into discovering who he is as a part of our family and also a part of another family. And so we hope and pray that we do the best we can and that we give him the tools. And, we have the proverbial like therapy jar for when it's time for him, when he's going to need it. We just hope he finds a good one, like that's the thing is life. Everyone needs a therapist. Hopefully everyone gets a good one.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
For several reasons. Often the Christian community, and maybe it's just from like the 80s and 90s, but it was like, oh, just pray harder. You don't need to talk to a therapist.
You're not closer to God.
Yeah.
Oh man, I know. Well, don't like God. Like I think that is. I definitely came from that school of thought that therapy was like a weakness, and to go to therapy meant you were weak. Mm-hmm. And it has been such a tool for me and a gift for me to speak to someone who knows what anxiety looks like, who knows what grief looks like, who knows what loss looks like. I'm such a big fan of therapy, and it can do wonders for anyone who's willing to, look for a good, like I said, if you have a bad therapist, it can do damage for sure. But good therapy is worth its weight in gold for sure.
Yes.
You Are With Me, which is available now at Leslie Jordan Music on the socials. We appreciate you so much for taking some time and hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you guys.
I messed up.
You did.
I forgot to ask her if when we come and visit, if she would have like tea or coffee with us, because we like to do that. Our goal is to kind of have friends in every city. So when we arrive, we have somewhere to go.
Yeah. So maybe one day you can reach BFF status.
But we're not there yet.
No, because we still have to ask that skill testing question.
Right. Oh, my goodness, what a treat.
I know.
I mean, never having an opportunity to talk before, like that's what I also love too, is that we have some relationships, others it's like brand new, and Leslie's just so amazing.
Yeah, she is an amazing woman, an amazing mom, wife, I'm sure. We didn't talk to her husband, but we'll go with that one. Yeah. And I appreciate her heart for creating safe places and spaces for others. I just feel so passionate about that because I feel like it's missing. I also loved her perspective on adoption. I always thought it was such a great thing, no complication, because it wasn't a part of something I had been a part of. Right. And just hearing the rawness of the perspective of a mom who's adopted a child and navigating those waters. It's a beautiful, hard thing.
And I love diving into the mind of a creative, or at least trying to maneuver the intricacies of someone who's like that.
Yes. And I also don't think I've never heard a why me like that.
Yeah, that's true too.
I think it's a first. Normally people will say a valley or a mountaintop or why not me?
Yeah.
But not like, God, why are you asking this of me? Yeah. Okay, why me though? Like there's other people to do it. So it's like that why me as you come into more of the fullness of what he's calling you to do. Neither good nor bad, just why me? Yeah. It sounds like, oh, yeah, you know what? Let's go for it. So it's good. It's pretty cool.
Download us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Follow us on the socials. We need to up our social game.
Yes.
Because we're on all the platforms.
We really are, including YouTube. So we will be posting shorts and are they called longs or full lengths or something?
I like shorts and longs. Shorts, mediums, and longs. Get ready for them.
We're going to do our best to make it as resourceful as possible for you as you're just going through life and maybe just need a snap or a snippet, little bite, or you just want to sit and be a part of the wild adventures that we go on.
Yeah, if you're Canadian, it's like a Timbit and a Long John. Short and a long.
Do they still sell those?
I don't know. It's been a day.
So yeah, it has been.
Anyways, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Check out places like Edify and faithstrongtoday.com.